Hey everyone, Dan and Joel here. This is episode 2, but really the first official episode, I feel like, of the Folk Filmmaking podcast. I feel like we're a little bit more together this week.
Yes. If you watched the first one, sorry,
It's devastating.
we're renaming it to the episode 0.
Episode 0.
Okay, this is the anime. This is the intro anime episode. That's just like it was a work in progress. Okay, this is the real one. We have the real mics. We have it's not a podcast unless someone has the headphones on. So
yeah, exactly. We got to have the headphones on. What I can tell you is that this podcast is going to be a lot about us talking about filmmaking and talking about movies that we've made. I think that would be the most interesting thing that we can kind of cover on here is talking about films we've made, talking about films that our friends have made, and actually showing them. I think like one thing that the podcast format really doesn't use often is like, they have clips, but you don't get to see like a whole movie while you're watching a podcast. I think that's one interesting thing that we can do here. So we're going to dissect our debut feature film, Chlorine. Any words about Chlorine to start, Joel?
I wish I could tell you this was our first feature film, but it wasn't. We had another film in production, but this was the first one that got released. And I mean, overall,
does that make you salty that this was the first one released, Joel?
I don't think I was salty. When Dan pitched the idea, I was definitely salty.
Yeah, he was.
And I was salty because I was in film school at the time, and we knew we wanted to make films together. Obviously, we had already been doing that, but I was like, man, we just got to finish. I'm like, you finish the thing you start. That's the thing.
He realized the mistake working with me after that, because I am the type of person who starts a million projects, much to Joel's chagrin. I mean, a la Swiped, which has not even been released yet at this point. Probably won't be released by the point of this podcast.
Danny Chugs. Are you ready for Danny Chugs?
Danny Chugs.
Guys, you are going to love our, Oscars, our Joel Haver's Oscars, make a movie during the Oscars challenge.
Yeah.
It is going to be so funny. It is. I am so excited for that, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
I'm doing what you do. I'm moving on to the new content before we talk about the old ones. No, I actually told Dan about this before we even started recording. I also do weddings. I shoot weddings, and so I finished editing one of mine, and I watched it on the TV here. And right below it was the film we're watching right now, which is Chlorine, and it was just randomly on the drive.
Yeah.
And maybe it was just because I was done with the wedding, and when you get done with the wedding edit, there's like this like relief.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I don't remember this movie being this good. Like it really was like I just sat there and watched it for like 30 minutes, even though I was dead tired from the editing session.
Hey, I pitched the idea. Joel was mad. Joel didn't want to do it. And you know what? It took some convincing. I think one thing, we've talked a little bit about it, but we've never really gone into it. Like, I mean, when the film first got made, Joel really wasn't on board with it initially. Like it was something that like I filmed scenes. I filmed entire scenes that are in the movie, like the pool scene. That's for the credits. I filmed the fireworks sparkler scene, which is a fan favorite, which is great because in Chlorine Kills there's like a redux of it.
There's a reprisal.
A reprisal of the same scene just to piss the fans off a little bit more.
We did a. I'll spill some tea that most people don't even know. We did a pre-screening or a pre-release screening of the film. I'm not going to divulge exactly
details.
When and where, but we got a lot of responses, and
a lot of good, a lot of bad.
A lot of good, a lot of bad is absolutely not what happened. It was absolutely. I think there were 16 reviews that we got, and I think 15 out of 16
were pretty bad. They
were
like lower than 3 stars. I think out of 5. I think it was like at least.
It was horrible.
I think majority were like 2.
It was horrible.
It was funny because there was a lot of notes to change the movie, and stubbornly, and I think maybe again much to Joel's chagrin, I didn't change a single thing about the movie after that. I remember watching it, and I was pretty confident that the movie was going to hit. Based on we did release we did make another cut, which was called the Bible cut.
A Bible cut.
To appease film festival. It was a Christian film festival. We were told by a friend of ours to enter into a Christian film festival that he had connections with. So we cut a very cleaned out version of this movie.
We took all the swears out.
Took all the swears. Took out a couple scenes.
Yeah.
There was the Vegas scene. There was like a
and there was a specific part in the Vegas scene
that like was cut out.
Yeah, where like Dan goes into one of those weird neighborhoods. And, no, I'm just joking. That's making that up. That doesn't happen. But even I remember one of the critiques from the pre-release screening was like about Vegas, like how dare they go to Vegas? Like, this is so bad.
Yeah.
And it was I think what I learned is how hard it is to get like a general audience. Like that must be hard for Hollywood to get. Like you got to get what the general audience will be. How do you do that? How do you know for sure? And I'm sure they have their ways of doing it. I don't know.
Well, I actually was involved in a Hollywood screening. Did I ever tell you this story?
No, tell me the story. What happened?
So I went to go see a film. It was an absolutely terrible movie. It was called Dylan Dog Dead of Night.
Oh, that sounds like a fantastic indie film.
It was an independent, but it was still Hollywood. It had the guy who played Superman in the older Superman movie, 2005 Superman Returns.
Oh, I don't even know that name.
Okay, so it's a Superman movie that was some people like it, some people hate it, but it had the main actor was the guy who played Superman.
Oh,
so it was still a big enough production that it was out there. I was in California. This was at a speech and debate tournament that I was going to speech and debate, and my friends invited me to hang out with them. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to go see this movie? It's like a pre-screening, and you have to review it." And of course, I was 15, and I thought it was great. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it was just fun." Because they didn't have all the effects shots completed.
Oh, I know what that's like.
So there's moments where they would just be green screen.
Yeah.
And you would just have to imagine. And then there would be parts where the effects were done.
Did it have text on screen? There is a big...
Yeah. It would be okay, Dylan Dog gets chased by, giant, werewolf or something like that.
Yeah, if no one knows about that we've seen that a couple times where instead of having it, you'll just see a text come up of what's supposed to happen. And it's tough because you want to get honest reactions to your film, but if it legitimately takes a lot of time and money, especially for indie creators, to get all the effects done. So, understandably so, but it unfortunately it is goofy and it does take you out of the experience.
Yeah, I mean it was interesting. It was an interesting experience. This was when I was before I was really doing movies in a official capacity.
We did not set this up where I'm behind me and Dan's behind him in this shot. This is perfect. I love it. Could you not tell that we're the same creators that made this?
Yeah. And I don't know. It was an interesting experience. I do think test screenings for me, they're important in a certain way, but it's curating that audience, knowing who is your audience. We did that test screening, and it was just totally not the audience for Chlorine. It was not the type of people who was the intended audience.
Well,
and I think to have followed that advice would have been potentially damning for the movie, just because it was targeting an audience that I don't think the movie was made for personally.
Yeah, I think Dan and I have had long discussions on sort of what happened there and what the correct move was. And obviously I think looking back on it now, it was probably the right move just to keep the cut the way it was.
Yeah.
But I think you can learn things from even hostile reactions to your work. There's definitely things you can learn, and it's not an end all be all, but in this case I would definitely agree. But how are we...
I think it was more that it wasn't even hostile. I think it was just this is the wrong audience. That's how I felt. This was not this was a very...
You're right. It wasn't hostile because they didn't know our content was going to be there. No one knew. It was a blind audience.
They didn't know who we were. They had no nostalgia for us. At that time, we didn't even have an audience. Yeah. So there really was nothing to go off. So I don't think they were hostile. I just think they were... The audience skewed more... I would say a more religious type audience, and
definitely more conservative, religious, type audience. Absolutely.
So I do feel like with the movie having, swears in it, and in this cut, we did not, I think we showed them just the regular cut of the movie. We didn't send them the Bible cut.
No, they did not get the Bible cut. They got
like the regular cut of the movie. So
what was it? I think there was basically talk about whether I was gay or not. They're like, oh man. And me and Jonathan's right behind me. Jonathan Wyatt plays. I was about to say Andrew, but it's not Andrew in this. That
is a very popular fan theory.
Yeah,
that is a very popular fan theory in the comment section. I've seen that a multitude of times.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay, actually. Well then maybe it wasn't out of nowhere. I guess that's a fan theory. I guess that.
Yeah. No. I mean, obviously, I think like with the movie, there's such a ambiguity to a lot of the scenes that I do think that like. Whether it's that or whether it's a different type of scene, I think there's a lot of ambiguity as to what you put into like what.
That's interesting to me though. I want to get serious for a minute because it's interesting to me that like male character on screen with another male character on screen, and if there's any emotion at all, that's where I think I don't know if I don't know what I like to think about that. I don't know. If
it's kind of a
weird. Isn't that weird though?
It's kind of a weird assumption to make that's where it goes, but like. I do think like I'm the type of person when I create a piece of content, I have my interpretation of whatever it is, and then once you give it over to an audience, you have no control of what they're going to think about it. And
you don't.
If that's how they gravitate toward, then you made that content. Maybe that wasn't your intention of how you were making it, but that's how it got perceived. And I think that's interesting.
Well, and you can learn. You can learn on that, right? You can learn. Well, is it the way that it was shot? Is it the way that is it the lens that was used? Was it the storytelling? Was it the words or the it was improv, so there wasn't like actual like dialogue written down. It was is it the type of way it was said? Is it just me? I don't know. Who knows?
It's interesting.
It's interesting to think about. I don't know why it came out now, but I thought it was worth talking about that. Just like the reactions to your work, you're always going to take it, one way or another. You're always going to take it pretty harsh and. Yeah, I don't think there is. Yeah, it was pretty harsh, but I think it's a learning lesson, and definitely should be done. I think everyone that is a filmmaker that's watching this can relate to like showing one of their short films or a feature film to a family member, and you're very stripped down, right? It's very tough to sort of take that. You can see their facial reaction. No one can No one can stop their facial reaction to watching your content.
It wasn't like a in-person festival like that we went to. Like it was, there was a festival and there was like things being shown, and we sent ours like very last minute, like at the behest of the creator of the event.
And overall, I'm still like, even though we got the reaction we did, I'm still glad that we did that. I thought it was valuable. It was valuable to think about these things.
I felt vindicated when the movie came out and it did well that we didn't change things, though. Like ultimately, I felt like any idea that like the film wasn't going to do well kind of got immediately squashed when the film did do well, and it did succeed at what it was doing, and it did reach its intended audience.
Well, it's a great lesson too for filmmakers that don't know this stuff. Like, you're going to make content, and at some point you're going to be in the edit, and you're going to say, am I going to do this for an audience or a specific audience that I want to see it? Or am I going to do this for what I intended it to be? Yeah. Everyone goes through that. Hollywood, clearly their focus is, we're going to make a film for the most general audience that we can. Yeah. Because that's the focus that they have. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Obviously, they're in it to make money, which makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, we were in it to get the movie out of the story that we wanted to tell, but we obviously also wanted to garner an audience. I mean, like let's not like make ourselves look so pearly white and clean here.
No, we are the pure filmmakers. They are. It was purely what we thought. There was no intention of trying to come on the audience. No, we did it for us. This was. No, but that's, I think, what we're talking about, I think, is important, just because you have to decide what your content's going to be, and that decision is tough. And until you make that and you do enough films, you're not going to know what that balance is for you as a creator.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Chlorine was a big leap for us to just try something different. I mean, we had only really done scripted storytelling up until this point.
Well, one film. So I mean,
one film, but like short films, we had done scripts too. Like for Demon and
was it for Demon too and
Demon
Cinephile?
and
really?
Pull the Trigger.
Oh, I thought it was only pull the trigger, but then
No.
again, it's just because I wasn't maybe a part of that. That's probably why.
No,
I'm not misremembering that.
No, you were a part of Demon. You were going to be a part of Demon, but you got really sick.
Oh yeah, I dipped. I remember that.
Yeah, you got really sick halfway through. And then Cinephile, I don't think you were there for that one. I don't remember you being there.
No, you shot that by yourself. That was with Anna, right?
But that was scripted. I mean, even before that, even like Estate Sabotage was scripted, which is like deep cut, deep lore.
We're jumping channels now. We're like going like this is, people are going to be like, what's going on?
I do think it would be interesting if we did a podcast episode of us just about our old channel.
Don't worry, that's going to be coming, guys. Don't worry.
We got
this will all make sense. This is we're only this is one episode in.
Episode 1.
That was too good.
That was too good.
That was so maybe let's go a little bit more back to Chlorine. So we finally released it, and of course I think Chlorine will never it's hard to forget it because we release it, Austin McConnell shots it out, it does some numbers, but it unfortunately is a month before COVID starts.
Yeah, and in general, I feel like Chlorine has an interesting reputation because, and this is my perspective on it, and this might be a different tangent than you were expecting me to go into.
I'm glad that you talked about this because I'm not someone who's like online looking at the reception of our stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So this is maybe more my own personal take, which is like I've always viewed Chlorine as like a blessing and a curse a little bit because like it is the film that everyone knows. And then it's also the film that everyone knows. Like, when I try to show people stuff, they'll be like, yeah, I love Chlorine. It was great. And you're like, yeah, we released 20 other movies. And then people will be like, yeah, Chlorine was really great. That's a great one. And then you're like, no. We, like, put out this really good one that's over here. You should check it out. It's really great. And then people are like, yeah, I love Chlorine. And it's like this, like, frustrating thing where you're like, I love the movie. Obviously, we're talking about it. There's a reason why we're starting a podcast with this episode with Chlorine because, and it's not to say I don't hate the reputation of it. Obviously, it's nice when you make a film and it's beloved or it's enjoyed. I mean, I do think within the filmmaking circle of YouTube, folk filmmaking, I think it is probably one of the big films that's in the folk filmmaking space.
Oh, yeah.
And it's nice that it's got a great reputation, but it's also frustrating when you're creating more pieces of content. Like, okay, like I think we had an expectation that Long Con, and it did good. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it got a decent amount of viewership, but like, I don't hear anyone talk about Long Con anymore. Like, I don't hear about people talk about, Sheep Theater as much or any other of those films that like, they don't have as much of a staying power or a life. And I think there's that like sort of curse you feel as a filmmaker when you like make one film that's like,
that does well. Yeah.
Does well. You feel kind of beholden to it. Like, okay, if I don't give the fans what they want, am I like sort of like turning away more viewership? Am I turning away more chances to potentially, grow my audience? Like, I don't know what Chlorine Kills will do. Maybe it's going to do terrible, and then like the brand is not as Teflon as I thought.
Did we even talk about Chlorine Kills yet? I don't think we did.
I mean, we've talked about it.
I'm talking about on this. You got to assume that people don't. So, and that's another reason why we're doing Chlorine. Like we're talking about our first feature, Chlorine, is because pretty soon we're going to have a new, basically the sequel, if you will.
Yeah, it's the direct sequel.
Direct sequel to Chlorine. And there's been a lot of films that have already been made in the Chlorine universe. And
you can check them all out. There's a playlist. I'll link it somewhere around here.
Check out the playlist. There's a lot to watch, obviously. You don't go away from here now. We haven't finished talking about Chlorine.
But it'll be interesting to see, like, being defined by one film. There is kind of this reputation of like I make every movie knowing that I'm like, is this going to live up to Chlorine? Is this going to live up to that standard that it's set so early for us? And obviously we got lucky with some shout outs and stuff, but
yes,
the film had staying power beyond the shout out too. Like, we could say, okay, it was Austin's shout out was great. Absolutely. But a good majority of the views came years later. Like,
it's interesting because I remember exactly where I was when the original Chlorine dropped. It was the day that it dropped, and it's hard not to like build it up in your mind as some special like event or moment. But it was cool because I was doing a wedding. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And I remember just getting my gear from the car and like thinking, I'm a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like I there's a film that's online that's feature length.
Yeah.
That like anyone, there's a time in every wedding where all the vendors sort of sit at a table and eat, and it's just time, and it's being able to say, like what's going on, like I gotta just dropped a feature film today, on YouTube, and knowing that it had gotten shouted out, and that it was this was the go time. Well, there was like a cool.
It was amazing to watch the first day. It got 12,000 views. That's like a lot. Like just by any standard, 12,000 views is good for a short video or a long video or whatever. And for it to be your first feature film, and then for the film to get, within the first few weeks, like 30,000, and then within, the time it's been out, it's been up to like almost 60,000 views. That's like crazy to think, like an original IP not connected to Star Wars or Marvel or any of that stuff. An original IP for a slow, artsy crime film that features almost no on-screen kills, features no on-screen like violence. It's very meditative and slow. Get 60,000 views on YouTube with basically one shout out. That's cool.
It was, and knowing, I think at that point it already had a decent amount of views, and so sort of even knowing that, it was like, you never know what you're gonna feel, but it was a sort of like just a different feeling knowing that there was, I don't know if you guys can relate or not. Let us know down below in the comments. But it's like when your first major film gets released, I'm sure it's probably even cooler if like it's a feature film festival, like it's like a film festival. That's got to be even cool. Well, even cooler, like to. But like for us on the model of YouTube, it was like.
I think it was a really interesting experience to watch it grow in views and like comments, and people were making like jokes and memes about it, and like making a little bit jokey comments, and like you could see people like engaging with it live, and you were like, oh my gosh, like there's like actually like a potential for this audience to grow. I think that was really cool. And I think like it was the first film that like felt like I feel like with Long Con, it felt like we were still learning the steps, and I feel like the ultimate product, like having looked back at it, I felt like was a bit weak, but like I feel like we learned so much about the movie making process. That was awesome, but I feel like Chlorine was the first one where it all came together. Like I feel like when I look back at it, I view Long Con as a stepping stone, and I view Chlorine as like us actually discovering mastery of something. Where like, okay, here we go, we're making a film. Here it is, and it's
I don't know about mastery. I mean, mastery might be a little strong here.
Mastery, I mean, in the sense of like getting a film out there. I don't think the film is perfect or anything like that, but I mean like mastery in the sense of like, okay, the first film, I don't feel like I knew how to make a movie, whereas I feel like with Chlorine, I knew how to make a movie, and we got it out there, and it felt like a movie to me. It felt more like an actual thing I would watch on YouTube.
And don't take that and be scared, because I think some people can take that and say like, oh my first films aren't going to be good, so maybe I should just hold off and do short films and stuff. Don't let that sort of bog you down. The only way to get good at something is by doing it. So go out and do a film, do a feature if you want to do it. If you're inspired to do that, absolutely go for it. And take our word for it. It's fun, but just don't let it like stop you from doing what you want to do and getting something out there.
I think when I made Long Con, I was watching it last night, and I was looking at it, and I remember thinking, like, I thought this was the greatest movie that had ever been made. I remember, like, thinking, like, oh, we're going to, like, win an Oscar for this shit. Like I remember thinking, like, oh, like, this is so great. Like, like, people will just understand my genius and finally get it. And when the movie came out, I think I had rose-tinted glasses on it a little bit, but, like, oh, I think it was really good, really good. And I think, like, what you learn is that, like, there's so much to learn about filmmaking. And I think the more loose format of Chlorine really helped us. One thing I look back when I look at Long Con, I see a lot of stilted, very forced dialogue that doesn't feel very natural. And I think one thing that really we perfected on Chlorine was just being a little bit more relaxed and accepting that sometimes dialogue isn't perfect. It's not all perfectly written lines that are all, in the right place at the right time. I think being a little bit more willing to just go with the flow helped a lot.
Yeah, every part of a film is difficult. And obviously the goal is you have something in your mind that you want to give to someone else.
Yeah.
But the translation is of the film. The translation is the work, is the art. And so that's all it is just getting closer with the lenses you use, with the camera bodies you use, the lights you use, the dialogue, the pre-production. All of that is just the different bolts and screws that all fit together to make your work. And there's so many aspects to get good at. And, maybe at that time you just weren't really good at the scripted feature. And it was fun. I was, I was doing film school at the time, and I was super hyped to, write my first, at the time, I think you were doing 12 features in terms of writing scripts. You were going to do 12 feature-length scripts.
I was writing 12 scripts.
And it was really cool to just hear about your process. And then I got to see, it was called Carnal Pleasures, and then ended up getting, you rewrote it into, the Long Con. It used to be a Mild Resemblance at one point.
Yeah, for like about a day.
for about a day. I tried to come up with my hand at coming with the title, and Dan was shut that down real quick. But
Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's just interesting how many, you're just not going to, it's the first, basically the point is you're not going to get it in the first try.
Yeah.
And it's you got to be okay with that and just accept that. You got to go for it. You got to try your best. If you want to do the improv style, that can give you a lot of freedom. But at the same time, you're not going to get better at script writing when you do the improv style. So there's a give and take to sort of the way you focus on making your film.
For me, I just realized the script writing process slowed things down. Like for me, I was just like, okay, like this is a part of the process that's not necessary, and I don't think it produces as good of results for me. Not necessarily for everyone. Some people love script writing. I know filmmakers who love writing scripts. For me, I didn't think it was that necessary because I'm like, I know what needs to be said in the scene by the characters. I just need to translate it to the people who say it. And then you're cutting out the middleman on that. I'm not suggesting that everyone should do that. Obviously, there are projects that I'm going to do in the future that are going to be scripted. There are going to be projects that I'm going to do that are going to be improv. And I think
this is scripted.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, every line has been memorized.
No.
But in all reality, I think the process of script writing is something that can sometimes really bog you down as a younger independent filmmaker because you're in your head and you're not creating the real world of like what's going on. So like just getting out there and shooting something can be just as good as scripting it. And I would encourage a lot of people to try the improv format if you're struggling with writer's block, because sometimes you can write things better if you actually know how to say them on screen first, and then you can look at it, edit it, and be like, okay, this was stupid. We could refilm this, or we could rewrite this now that we know what the scene kind of needs to be. I don't know, just things like that are little hacks that I think can help you, especially when the stakes are much lower.
Well, yeah, and that's the benefit of the stakes being lower, right? Is that you're gonna screw some things up. You're gonna get some stuff wrong. How many short films did we do where I forgot some of the audio gear, or we didn't have the right lens that we wanted to use? Dan's laughing because it absolutely happens.
There was one film that I got pissed at, Joel. I got pissed.
Oh, man, what was it? It
was Pull the Trigger. We had this actor. And it's been so long. I could say his name. His name is Charles. He's this actor we worked on this project with. And guy would never show up. He just never would show up. It was on a film called Pull the Trigger, and he just would never show up. And we had this issue, so we had to get him on set in order to, film it. And it was like kept having problems. Joel's uncle, who was not like the most mobile guy, was like, we had a shoot with him, and then he missed a shoot, and Charles needed to be there, and he was like, yo, I can't be there. And we're like, buddy, you gotta be there.
So we were just at a house, my late grandma's house at the time, with my uncle,
That was part of it, but then the final shoot was me, you, and Kenny.
Oh, yeah.
And Noah. doing cinematography.
We were outside. It was night. It was a nighttime.
I was doing the scene outside my front of my old house, and we filmed this really complex scene with like tons of different parts to it. And we get done, and it was like a day or two later, and Joel's like, Dan, I don't have the audio. I think I wiped it. And I remember being like, what? You did what? I was so mad, but it worked out. We
used the cam audio, and the cam audio ended
fine.
up being fine, but it was like, I think it was actually this mic, or was it that mic? I forgot which one. And it was one of these mics was it. And I remember that night I was in my room behind the computer, and I double checked like 3 or 4 times. I was like, please let this be the card that has the audio on it. Nope, we must have cleared it for a different scene, and then the audio wasn't the best anyway. We were using this mic with a different recorder that was not meant. The point is that you're going to learn things that it's better to learn them up front. So don't let anything stop. The thing that you should not do is the thing that will stop you from making the film. If that means you're not going to write a script, don't write a script, do it improv. If that means not worrying about your camera, your lens, getting crazy like lights or something, shoot it on your iPhone. These things have been done and they work, and they've been proven to work. The film that won the best feature film at the Oscars, the filmmaker, what's his name? Sean Baker. He shot stuff on iPhone.
Yeah.
It can be done.
Literally, you can do anything you can with any of the equipment you have right now is 10,000 times better than anything that anyone in the 1990s or 2000s was playing with, unless they had a massive budget.
Yeah. So even if you're doing it with an iPhone, you can still find success. You can still find something. Okay, we got to stop for this scene. This is one of my favorite shots of the film. We're in the field at golden hour. Edward is flopping around like a fish. Dan's got his good old hammer in the hand.
This was the scene my girlfriend got so disturbed by this one. She loved this one. She was like, "What are you doing, Dad?"
There's another lesson here, which is like believe in your own, like your own work. Obviously, it can be tough. You can see the things that are wrong with your own work, but if you don't like your own work, that's probably a bad sign. Yeah, but it's also something you can learn from and try to make it so you do like your work.
I think like at some level, if you don't like your work, who's gonna like your work? Like if you made it, like there's the self-effacing filmmaker, the filmmaker who can never just enjoy their own thing. And I'm like, if you can't enjoy it, then why would anyone else want to enjoy it? So at some level, you have to find something you love about it, even if it's bad. Find something you love about it, and then find the ways you can improve on it. Obviously, we were not this good when we started. We didn't just like one day be like, okay, we know how to use a camera and lights and audio, and it took a while. I mean, obviously with like growing pains and stuff like that, but like ultimately, the only way you're gonna get better is just by doing.
And I'm sure as this podcast goes on into new episodes, you'll see the similar logic and the same sort of message. But it's a message that will never get old because you have the freedom here on YouTube to do it. Why not do it? And that's the thing I think that's great about YouTube specifically that really changed the game for film in general was there was no other option to not have a script, to not do it with professional cameras and lights, because the only place to let your movie to be shown, unless it was just on a home movie that you connected via the yellow, red, and white cables. That was the only way to get it was in a feature film festival.
Yeah, and then so you had to put all the effort and time into it because
you spent a lot of money.
Yeah, so you weren't gonna risk not having a script for that, but like nowadays, I think a movie like this or movies that I've done in this style. I mean, like I look at a movie that I did years later called Love Celeste with Joel Haver. I feel like that film could easily play at a film festival.
Oh, absolutely.
I think like that movie's plenty good, and there's other films I've seen him do or us do or Cody Clark or doing productions where I see this stuff and I'm like, this is plenty good to do, and it's improv, and some of those filmmakers do improv, some of them don't. But like what I can tell you is that the improv style definitely has come a long way. I mean, it has roots in film festivals. I mean, you look at the stuff of like Mark Duplass or Greta Gerwig or any of those kind of filmmakers. Safdie brothers. You're looking at those type of guys. Some of it's scripted, but a lot of it's improv, and those roots grow deep in there. And I think like the independent improv scene has always been there. It's just tapping into that to create that kind of style, and being okay with there being like a little bit of sloppiness to the lines, and not everything's going to come out exactly how you wanted it to, but it could potentially be even better than you thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when we talk about improv, will consider it to be like the dialogue. Like all the dialogue, there's nothing written. Yeah. But this Chlorine was more than just the dialogue was improv. The whole movie was improv. The scenes were improv. I would just dance, like you said at the beginning. Dan, you shot some like promo, just some like ideas type shots, which of course ended up in the film.
Yeah,
and then we just kept adding to it. It was just you kept adding. Well, what if this happened? And then sort of what if this happened? And you don't just have to do improv dialogue. You can do improv, create an idea, create one scene. And then where does the rest of the scene go?
Speaking of the improv scene,
we go.
That's perfect. Let's pause. I'm just joking. But the human mind is really a powerful tool, and storytelling is intrinsic in all things. Like even when you're like a baby and you're a kid, like you get told stories by people all the time. Like I can think of stories when my parents told me stuff like years ago, and they all follow a similar structure. You understand story structure. Like think of a movie, close your eyes and think about it for a second. You think about,
no, I'm sorry.
you think about, like what is a story? There's a hero, there's a villain, there is
conflict.
There's conflict. There's a start. There's an end.
There's a want. The character wants something.
There's a journey, and then there is the coming back home. At the end. I mean, I feel like Chlorine, ironically, being an improv movie in every sense, follows the
hero's journey.
The hero's journey, which I read as a kid. I read The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell, and like. Ever since I read that, I knew what storytelling was, in a sense of like, okay, these are the beats that need to be hit. You can follow that and still create a really unique and interesting story that doesn't feel like it follows those things. But if you watch this film beat for beat, it follows the Hero of 1,000 Faces to a T.
Oh yeah, and there's absolute truth there, and you don't have to, obviously, if you don't want to. You don't have to do this hero's journey. Everyone does whatever they want to do at the end of the day. But it is a fantastic roadmap that will lead you to a lot of creative things. And the hero's journey, as long as you just put in different characters, it never gets old. That's the beauty of the hero's journey. It is a story that will forever last. And you can just plug and play different characters, different ideas, different emotions, different storylines, different...
I would argue even with like films that are more experimental, they still follow those structures to some degree. Like there's still a lot of like, there are some films that's like, here is a fruit growing, like, okay, yeah, it seems silly, but it's like, okay, it starts with a normal thing. There's there's growth, there's change, and then there's death and decay. Okay, like that's still a story structure in and of itself.
He's a poet, guys. This is just
like I'm not saying that like it's the same level, but like it still is story structure. Like it's still what intrigues the human mind, which is seeing something and watching it change, and then watching it end in some sort of way, whether it be a good end or a negative end. Whether it be a tragedy, a comedy, a romance. Whatever it is, it ends up, being a full story.